I think it's really important for us to remember that crying is entirely natural. All babies cry. It's their only form of communication. And we treat the nighttime cries or the bedtime cries so much differently lots of times than the daytime cries. I don't do any of that type of sleep training because I really do believe that we should be responding to babies the same as we do during the day at night.
Hi. Okay. Today, buckle up, everybody. We are talking about sleep.
Oh, snuggle up.
I love that. Snuggle up, because sleep is one of the most important parts about being human, yet everyone has trouble with it, it feels like, from infancy until the day we die. And I'm really excited to talk about sleep for kids today. And it's so polarizing because everyone's so divisive on sleep. Is it how you sleep, how you get your kids to sleep, how you keep them asleep? And I feel like everyone and their cousin has an opinion about it. So I'm really excited to talk to an actual expert.
Everyone will tell you that whatever you're doing it wrong.
Yes. But we are here to tell you that whatever you're doing great.
Yes.
And we are so happy that Rachael Shepard-Ohta is on the podcast today to validate our feelings about infant sleep, toddler sleep, kids sleep, and a little bit of adult sleep too, and tell us how it's possible to get our kids sleeping well without going crazy. She's going to tell us about how night wakings are actually not a marker of a successful night of sleep, which is mind-blowing to me. So I'm really excited for you all to hear that. And also how to change your mindset and follow your gut when it comes to figuring out the best way to get your kid to sleep. Rachael is the founder of Hey Sleepy Baby and a certified sleep consultant who helps parents find responsive, attachment-minded sleep solutions with compassion and a lot of evidence-based support. She's also a mom of three kids, and the host of not one, but two podcasts. She is wonderful and knowledgeable, and we're so excited to have her here. So welcome, Rachael. I have a million questions, especially, this for me is I've been dying for this episode for so many reasons, but mostly because I have an 8.5-month-old who's been a little crazy with sleep. What is good sleep for a kid? What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's such a layered question because it depends on so many factors, right? So what I would consider good in the newborn stage is totally different than what I would consider good at 1 year old or at 3 years old. So it really depends. But I think we, as kind of millennial parents, tend to think of the amount of wakings and things like that as kind of the litmus test or the barometer of how well our child is sleeping. And I kind of like to push back against that a little bit because sleeping through the night really is a social construct. There is truly no such thing as sleeping through the night. Even adults, we all wake up between sleep cycles. We just don't remember most of those wakings. And so I like to kind of reframe it for parents and think about how disruptive are those wakings, right? So is your child rolling over and falling right back to sleep? Great. You probably don't even have to count that as a waking, right? Are they waking up, in the first year or so and needing a feeding to fall back asleep? And then they, go back into their crib and they're all good and you can go back to sleep easily? Perfect. That's also very normal and fine. But when it starts to get tricky is, okay, they're waking up and they're screaming. They're not calming down, or they're staying awake for a really long time, or they're waking up distressed, needing something every single hour all night long. And then that's when we really see, okay, this is not actually super sustainable for most parents, right? So I kind of like to think about it that way because the truth is that it's normal for all of us to wake up at night.
I love this reframe of the success is not measured based on how many times you and your child are waking up in a night, because that really takes the pressure off. Because, it's intense. I stopped checking the clock when I would wake up with my kids because that really would screw with my head.
That's advice I give all the time. Yeah, stop looking at the clock. Stop count. Yeah. Oh yeah, I say that all the time. I have a clock in my room that allows me to have it shut off in the middle of the night. So it's on, I can see the time until about 10 o'clock, which is when I go to bed. It turns back on at 6, which is on the early side, but I'm willing to wake up around around 6. But in the middle of the night, it doesn't show me the time. So I have no idea what time it is if my kids wake me up. And it really, really helps with that kind of anxiety where you're doing the math in the middle of the night of like, okay, if I fall back asleep in the next 10 minutes, I'll get 4 more hours. Or, we all do that math, and it's really stressful, and it doesn't help us actually feel more rested. It actually does the opposite.
Yes, I am guilty of the night math. Like,
yes,
100%.
we all are. Yeah.
Can you tell us about what sleep training actually is before we talk about like different approaches to sleep and all things sleep? This is just, what does it actually mean to train your kid on how to sleep?
Well, it's become such a nebulous term that's really hard to nail down because it really comes down to like the way it's marketed. So people kind of take this term and twist it to fit their own idea of what they do or what they want to do or what they don't do. And it's all about the marketing, right? So some people say using wake windows or having a bedtime routine, they think those things are sleep training. Other people say that's just, sleep hygiene and good habits. So it really can be tricky to talk about sleep training because you're kind of working with a million different definitions. So it's really, really difficult. What I consider sleep training is more of the traditional definition before it kind of got rebranded a million times in the last, decade or so, which is it's a behavior modification technique. So anybody that's in like psychology or education knows these kinds of terms about behavior modification, extinction of a behavior, things like that. You're basically trying to, for lack of a better term, train the baby or the child to stop cueing for you when they wake up. And I didn't say stop waking up because that is not actually what happens. They don't stop waking up. They just stop crying out when they do wake. And there are, of course, a variety of different methods to achieving that, but most of them do require leaving the child to be, independent in their own sleep space, and you're kind of backing away adult support. And sometimes that's really gradual and more on the quote unquote gentle side. And then other times it's a little more intense and extreme where you're just leaving the baby to what they call cry it out. So yeah, there's lots of different definitions and there's like a huge range. So it's really hard to tease all of it out for parents, and it makes it really confusing. Yeah.
Can we talk about crying for a second? Because babies and kids cry a lot. And I would love to know from you is like what your stance is on crying when it comes to sleep. And maybe you have to do a little bit of like background about your approach to sleep, and we can get there for sure. But because you said crying, my brain went straight to crying. How do you think about babies crying during sleep or when they're going to sleep, like just the relationship of crying to sleep in general?
I think it's really important for us to remember that crying is entirely natural. All babies cry. It's their only form of communication. And them crying is, it's usually for a reason, but it's not always this huge emergency, right? Whether it's during the day or at night. There's all kinds of reasons that they might cry. But I think that where there is a real disconnect kind of in our society is that we treat the nighttime cries or the bedtime cries so much differently lots of times than the daytime cries. So that's why, you mentioned my approach and we were talking about sleep training just a moment ago, and I don't do any of that type of sleep training because I really do believe that we should be responding to babies the same as we do during the day at night. And it's not convenient. It's not easy. I have 3 kids. I know it's exhausting. Especially in this country, we have such a little support for parents, which is such a huge problem. But if your child's crying during the day, you're likely going to them and you're trying to figure out what's going on. You're trying to soothe them. Of course, you don't have to like rush to their side within 2 seconds every single time. And you don't have to get it right every single time. You don't have to be perfect. But most of us are not, putting our child in a room and leaving them there if they're crying for 15 minutes during the day. So it doesn't make sense to me that we would do that at night.
It's so polarizing though, like as a conversation, because like in full transparency, I have 2 kids age almost 8 and almost 10. And like my youngest was a very intense baby who had he had a very fast birth. He had we had some trouble feeding and all of that. He cried so much during like the first 6 months. And I did not really, my first was like a very easy baby compared to that. So I would not always, but often put him to bed, leave him to cry for about 15 minutes. And then he would fall asleep on his own because I did not have back then the knowledge or the awareness that this might not be good for them. It didn't feel good for me. I knew that I felt so guilty, but I was also learning to shut my heart to that a little bit because I was otherwise so incredibly tired. And the little support that I had was from my mom, who was from a different age and from a different era, might as well say.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, because she was like, yeah, you had a crying hour when you were a baby. It's normal. I would just leave you and then go do some yard work. And I was like, well... And like I had I was the first of my friend group or my family to have like a baby. So I did not have like the more modern take on crying. So
right. By the way, same. By the way, me too. I did cry it out with my first. And that like informs a lot of, everything that like that's the whole reason that I do what I do now, because I also went through that whole thing with my first. And, I didn't know about... It's so hard. And I didn't know about temperament. Now, like that I know him, he is a very sensitive kid. And that's why it didn't work. He would get so worked up and it didn't work for us, even though it was this program that everybody said like,
oh my God, my kid is now also such a sensitive kid still. I never even connected the two. Oh my God.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, because they're...
Epiphany time.
Well, and there is research on this, that these kids that are more sensitive in temperament are harder as babies. So their parents end up trying sleep training, like what we were just talking about, more often because they're desperate and exhausted and like at the end of their rope because these babies are so hard. And the babies often don't take to it. Like it doesn't work, or they have to repeat it a lot of times, or it's just super intense. So yeah, you're definitely not alone in that experience.
I think this temperament thing is so interesting because my two kids are also very different. And we all know every kid is different, but then when you're living it, it's very apparent just how different. And my daughter is 8.5 months old, and she went through a lot of travel as a baby between like 6 and 7 months, basically. Different time zones, different sleep, different places, different patterns, different associations, different routines. That really fuck shit up, so to say. Like it got messy. It got really messy to the point where by the time we got home, she was waking 8 to 10 times a night. And she was mad as shit. And she was like, you just could tell she was so tired, and she couldn't nap she would just nap very erratically. She would wake after 15 minutes, or she would sleep for hours. It was very crazy and hard to keep track of. The nights were really hard. Like we would put her down to bed at 7. She would wake at 8, 8:45, 10, 10:30, midnight, 2, 2:15, 2:45, 4. It was like
brutal.
Like she was going crazy. We were going crazy. My toddler was waking up repeatedly like, what's happening? What are we doing? Why is everyone awake?
Right.
And then we started to I would call it sleep training, honestly, where we're like really focusing on a regiment of schedule, association, routine. There is some crying, honestly, but within a couple of days, she went from waking 10 times a night to sleeping through the night. No problem. Like literally no. Now she just sleeps through the night. She doesn't really cry when we put her to bed anymore. However, naps are another big problem. But I think what I learned from like your content and from working with other sleep folks, locally here in Toronto where I am, we talked a lot about sleep associations. And this is really crucial for infants, of course, but I've heard that it can be really impactful for older kids too, and even adults. Can you tell us like what are sleep associations? Why do they matter so much? And how can that be an ingredient to avoid the like cry it out method that you've talked about?
Sure. So yeah, sleep association really is just anything you associate with falling asleep or with it being sleep time. So for infants, most people know like a bedtime routine is a really great thing to implement. It's research-based, it's evidence-based, and there are like no downsides. It's only positives for a bedtime routine, right? So some of the bedtime routine includes associations like maybe you sing a song or you rock your child or you give them a feeding, all of those things right up until the time it's time for them to go to sleep, so that it kind of wires their brain to predict, okay, sleep is coming. These things happening in this order every night tells me that sleep is coming. So it does really help because kids love structure and they love predictability. It makes them feel safe and secure to know exactly what's coming. And then the sleep associations themselves can also be calming. So for example, rocking is something that a lot of babies love, or feeding. And those things really engage the sensory system, which helps the nervous system relax and get ready for that like rest and digest time. So that's why those types of sleep associations just really come super naturally to most of us as parents. And it's what most babies really enjoy. I mean, we as adults have sleep associations. Maybe you have an eye mask or a white noise machine yourself, or, you know, you have like this little ritual that you do before you get into bed, or you have to be in a certain position. Like those are all sleep associations for us too.
Doom scrolling on Instagram for 2 hours count.
That's mine. Yeah. My sleep association is an hour of TikTok and chocolate in bed.
4 inches from your face being like, yes, this is exactly what I need.
Actually, I was going to ask you, would you share a little bit about like what your family routine is like and how you figure it out for each kid? Because every kid is different. We keep saying that. So like, are you doing the same routine with all of your kids, or is it different?
Now we are. Yeah. I mean, we've definitely gone through like phases and iterations, but for the most part, our bedtime routine since my first baby, who's almost 8, since he was a newborn, our routine has really been pretty much the same, and they love it. It's like a well-oiled machine. It just is. It's like my favorite time of the day. And I know a lot of parents hate bedtime, and I always feel bad saying that because it really is like just the best part of my day with my kids. I love our routine. So after dinner, we'll usually come upstairs. They will do baths, and then they will get, you know, their pajamas on and brush teeth and all of that kind of stuff. And then they'll each pick a few books, and we'll all pile into my bed, and I'll read books with them while my husband cleans up the kitchen and kind of like resets the house for the next day. And then 2 of our kids share a room. So our older 2 kids right now share. And so they get tucked into bed. Sometimes my oldest will read a little bit more. He has like this little book light, like headlamp thing that he likes.
A headlamp. Oh my God.
So he'll read. And my daughter is, she's 5 and she's like, no, thank you. I just want to go to bed. So she just falls asleep while he continues to read. Sometimes my husband will like give them a little back scratch or something before they go to bed. And then I will lay with my toddler, and she usually likes me to play some kind of like playlist or songs while she falls asleep, and I just lay next to her. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I leave. That's really it. Yeah, everybody gets their needs met. Enough.
Just that sentence, everybody gets their needs met. Like,
yeah,
that's like, can we just appreciate that sentence, please? Because
I think it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, with my 3.5-year-old, like you can tell if his needs aren't met, he can't settle. Even though our routine is the same. Also, we do like dinner, bath, brushing your teeth, pajamas. We read 3 books every night in his bed. We snuggle until he falls asleep. But some nights, like after 1 book, he'll just like literally get out of the bed and start running. And like, he'll be like, I'm an airplane. And he just like flies around. And then I'm like, whoa, like what's happening here?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, his like either his cup is just not full enough, or one of my, like between my husband or I, maybe one of us came home a bit later and didn't have time to play with him.
Yeah.
So then we need to catch up on play. What we've noticed too is like having that extra time for connection makes such a difference. So
huge.
Like we each need one-on-one time with him before bed, even if it's like 4 minutes, honestly. That has made a big difference in his ability to sleep. Mm-hmm. But he stopped being able to fall asleep without us in the room. He used to fall asleep on his own, and we would just like say goodnight after books and snuggles, and then we would go. And now he's like terrified of monsters and whatever else.
So common at that age. Yeah.
I guess the question is like, you know, his needs are being met. We're staying with him. He can sleep through the night on his own. Mm-hmm. It's okay for us. We enjoy like a little snuggle. But some nights we fall asleep as well. And then we wake up and we're like, oh, holy shit, like how do we go on with the day?
Yeah.
Or some days it's just like, it takes too long. Honestly, like we actually had a friend's birthday last night, and we put him to bed before the babysitter came. My husband was in there for like an hour, and I'm like, yo, we gotta go. Like, what are we doing? But like if he left, it would have been.
He could probably sense that you guys were leaving, right? Like he knew.
Probably.
Because that always, every single time, it'll take longer. If they think you're going out, if they think you are busy, if they think you'd rather be somewhere else, it will take longer.
So like, tell me, do you think, is this that like his needs are being met, but sometimes our needs are not being met as parents, where we're like, okay, we both have demanding jobs, and we do want some of our evening, and we don't want to lay in bed with him for an hour every night. I would love to lay with him for like 20 minutes. But like, how do you know what the right thing to do is in that situation?
I think it's a balance. And I mean, I think if there are things going on where he's like truly afraid, like you want to, definitely get to the bottom of what that is and unpack that a little bit. It's so common for like 3-4-year-old preschoolers to start to get these fears coming out of nowhere because their imaginations just developmentally are really exploding at that point. I mean, some things that I do. So I love to listen to audiobooks or podcasts. So sometimes I will put my little earbuds in while I'm laying with my toddler. And that way I feel like I'm getting my me time while I lay with her while she's falling asleep. And I'm like, this is great. I'm chilling. Like you can take as long as you want to fall asleep. But if it's taking, I usually tell parents, like if it's taking an hour regularly, an hour once in a while, it's like, that just is what it is. We all take a long time to fall asleep sometimes, like for no apparent reason. Yeah. It just is, that's human. If it's taking an hour plus very regularly though, I would take a look at your child's overall sleep needs. So especially once they're older than 2.5 or 3, is it time to potentially cut down the nap, shorten it, even cut it all together? Do they need more like big sensory play before bed, time outside? Are they hungry? Like all of these things that we want to make sure we're checking the boxes to make sure that they are like perfectly primed to fall asleep, within 30 minutes or within reason.
Can you talk about what is perfectly primed to fall asleep for different age ranges for our listeners who don't know? And by our listeners, I mean me, but also everyone.
So, you kind of talked about it already. Like, it seems like you kind of know that your child needs that connection before bed, which is so important. All of them do. We have to think about the fact that sleep for our kids is like the biggest separation of their day, especially if they're not co-sleepers, if they're in their own rooms and all of that. Like, that's a huge separation. They need to feel that connection cup filled up, like you mentioned. So that's one thing. They need their sensory needs to be met. So kids that are, inside all day, sitting all day, having a lot of screen time, like all of those types of things are not getting their sensory systems activated in the way that they need to be able to get into rest and digest at night. So they need lots of big gross motor play, heavy work. So like pushing heavy things, pulling heavy things, jumping, running, swinging, all of that kind of stuff is so important for them, not just before bedtime, but throughout the day. And then like we talked about earlier, they need those, sleep associations. They need that kind of structure in place, and they do sometimes need the boundaries and the limits to come from the parents. So if you have a child that's just like completely off the wall, you've tried everything that I've talked about already, like there might be an issue with, this kid is feeling unsafe because they are being put in the lead. And they really need the parent to be the one that's in the lead and in charge. And that doesn't mean that you're, screaming at them and locking them in their room or, making them cry it out, but you're in charge, you are setting the limit, you are setting the boundary, and you are going to say exactly what you mean and stand firm in that.
Do you have an opinion on when your kids are trying to negotiate during bedtime? So like one more book, I just want to do this one thing.
I think you really have to tune into your kids' personalities, and it really depends on, also it kind of depends on age. Like if my kids are older now, they're 2 of them are 5 and almost 8. So if they say like, can we just read one more book? Sure, we can read one more book. I don't care. Because I know my kids and they're not going to like push me and they're not going to take advantage. If I had a kid that I know would push or I know would do that every single night, like you likely know if you have a spicy kid like that, right? Then
Esther,
you know.
For those of you who know, Esther's pointing at herself if you're not watching the video.
Then you know that your kid actually does really need you to mean what you say and say what you mean and stay to the plan every single time. And that's what that kid needs. So again, like we've been saying, no kid is different. No parent-child relationship is the same. So it really is a matter of like kind of tuning into your unique child's personality and temperament and just where they are in their...
The reason why I was like pointing at myself is because like for us, like once both my kids went into toddlerhood, they were like decent sleepers. They went to bed at a reasonable hour. We read the books. I like the shorter storybooks because then we can actually say like, yes, okay, 3 books. And like, I know that like within 15 minutes we'll be done with reading. My youngest also went through a phase where he had not just nightmares, but night terrors with just like half an hour or more of just like screaming and not waking up, which was weird and terrifying and horrible in its own right. But now we've gotten to that age with like an 8-year-old and an almost 10-year-old that they are like a little bit more in control over what their evening looks like. They have a little bit more screen time because they are older kids, and that's like one of their ways of winding down. But they always like every single day I have to remind them that you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like they want to watch a little bit more of TV and they will be like, yeah, sure, we'll just have like a kiss goodnight instead of like the whole bedtime routine, reading books, because they still really love reading books with us. Even though like right now, just like going to like a Star Wars Lego catalog and pointing at all of the figurines and saying like which ones we want and which ones we want to be. And that is so annoying because like it's like one of these little circles where it's just like it's endless. It doesn't have like a natural end because they can keep coming back to it over and over. Right. But that's like their thing. When I remind them like, okay, if you continue watching for a little bit, which is fine because very often I still have to work. I'm in Belgium. It's past 10 p.m. for me right now. Like I'm working after their bedtime, which is like another thing because like you mentioned, they know that very often I'm working after them. So I also have somewhere to be and they know. And they are like, but why are you working? But why can't you stay longer? I was like, if I wasn't working, I would be winding down, which is also not here in your bed. So it's always, there's always like something where they're pushing back and then like, if they then actually run into the boundary of like, oh yeah, you picked staying up later and only having a kiss goodnight, then it's like, but why can't we read books? I forgot. But it's been like this for the past years. It's the same.
Right. So for kids like that, and this is so common, for younger kids, sometimes this can be helpful as well. Some kind of like visual cue can be really, really helpful. So maybe a visual schedule or some kind of checklist that you go over well before bedtime, right? So maybe you make a plan for the whole week and then they can change it every Sunday night or something. But you're going to say, okay, you're going to get 30 minutes of screen time, then we're going to do books, then I'm going to kiss you goodnight. And by the way, tonight I have to work. So we're going to have to figure out, how we can say goodnight. I will check on you when I'm done working. Or, like I mentioned earlier, my son sometimes isn't ready to go to sleep when the other kids are ready to go to sleep. So he's allowed to stay up and read with his little light. And he usually just puts himself to sleep when he feels tired. And we don't have to really enforce it.
But what if that is like at 10:30? Because like my kid will, they are also like, they have both like their separate rooms and they will also both read. But like if I don't go in and say like, you have to stop now, they will continue reading way past their bedtime.
Can you give them like a little timer?
They have clocks and they ignore them.
Clocks are not as exciting as like a little timer. So some kind of, sand timer, or you can get these clocks that are like that light up a different color when it's time.
Yes, because like they can tell time very well. The way that I am, or I used to be as a kid, was like, okay, I will be reading until like 10:15. And then it's like 10:16. I'm like, okay, well, now I have to read until 10:30 because I can go to sleep at 10:16.
Totally.
Yeah, no one wants to go to bed at 10:16.
Yeah, giving them as many visual cues as possible is going to be so much more effective. Kids respond mostly to visual. They're not responding to verbal. I mean, any parent knows that. We ask our kids to get in the car and get their backpacks 65 times in the morning. So
logic doesn't work with
logic
children,
doesn't work. Like spoken directions don't work. Like give them something visual, and especially if they can make it themselves or they can create it and feel like they're really in charge of it, it'll be really empowering for them.
Can I ask you, why is that sleep such a heated topic though? So I feel like everyone and their uncle has an opinion about the children's sleep. And honestly, like my mom texts me multiple times a week to check in on everyone's sleep. Like, how is everyone sleeping? It's like a very common text. And I think there's so many schools of thought around sleep, especially with babies, but also with young kids and how we manage sleep as adults. Can you, do you spend your whole career just like fighting against the haters? Yes. Is it as polarizing for you as it is for us on like the outside? Because it seems like you can't win.
No, of course. And I'm coming at it from these two lenses where I'm a parent, right? So I am feeling very personally invested and also very personally judged for a lot of my sleep choices. And then also professionally, there's a lot of different schools of thought and people that really disagree with my approach. And I really disagree with a lot of other people's approach. And I think it's also fascinating. I'm writing a book right now, actually, kind of about this, because I am just so fascinated by how we look at it in like these more Western countries, particularly North America, because it is very different than the way a lot of other places look at it. And in a lot of ways, it's overly stressful. It's overly judged. It's overly polarized. It really doesn't need to be this way. And so I'm really trying to unpack like why why is it why is it like this? Why is it so hard? And a lot of it comes down to like the fact that we are not supported in this country. So parents are forced into making a lot of choices that they wouldn't otherwise make, and that, that aren't made in other places.
Can we talk about that for a minute? Like the culture and how culture plays into sleep and also resources, of course. Because if I always think about this, like if I didn't have to wake up and go to work, I wouldn't care as much if I slept. Like it would be shitty not to have a good night's sleep, but it would be fine because I could nap or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really common one. I mean, obviously our maternity leave policy here is atrocious and like just that's a full stop. But it's really interesting because I talk to a lot of parents, for example, in Canada, where they have very generous maternity leave policies, 12 to 18 months in some cases. And there is still enormous pressure to sleep train and a huge sleep training culture.
Yeah.
So some of it is like resources and some of it is really just culturally, you're made to feel like a failure if your baby doesn't sleep through the night. You have all these unrealistic expectations of how they should be sleeping. There's a lot of comparison, what you're seeing with your friends or what you're seeing with people on social media that's adding to all of those feelings. Yeah. And it's interesting because like there are some countries, I was speaking with someone in Kenya the other day and, those moms get up and go to work too. It's like a very different work, but they're taking their babies on their backs and just bringing them along. And like, so it's not as cut and dry as like, oh, well, I have to go to work, so I have to do it this way. Or, oh, I have maternity leave, so I should do it this way. There's a lot of cultural nuance there that's just really, really fascinating.
Very true. I have friends who've grown up in many different countries and many of them grew up co-sleeping until they were in their teens. And my husband is from Germany and their family, like, none of our friends in Germany sleep trained ever. And we slept trained our son. And I remember like the response of like that family. And
I was going to say, I bet they didn't like that.
It was like, you let your child cry. And we were like, well, that was like very much the norm. And I think also with my daughter now, it was what we knew from our son. And we knew that it worked. It actually did work well for him in the sense that like it didn't take a lot of crying because it just really took a couple days. And it was gut-wrenching. Like, I'm not going to lie. It's so hard to see your baby cry. Even if they just can't have a cookie and they're having a meltdown, you're like, I feel for you, but absolutely not, So like, I think there's like, it's such a weird like mind game, I think too. Cause like, I think like someone was telling me about how like when your child is having a meltdown, let's say over something that, quote, seems silly or, they're not in danger. And this is a part of growing up is to be, to not get what you want all the time. And when they cry over that kind of stuff, we don't make a big fuss. But when they cry because they're frustrated that they can't sleep, people go running. I don't know if that's a really fair comparison to make. I feel like it's just so case by case. And because every temperament and kid is different, I do think like you just have to do what's the best thing for your own kids. And like, I would love to hear your thoughts on that because I feel like you've really, I mean, I've been following you for so long and like, I know you advocate for people to do what they want. And I feel like on your website, it even says like, you're the only one who knows. And
totally,
like, I'm a huge believer in that. But like, what do you say to people who come and say like, hey, Rachel, like I slept trained my kids and it worked really well. And that's great, but it's like nothing against what you're doing. Like, how do you look at that when it comes to other people's successes with different methodologies or people even supporting the methodology that you work with and how that maybe changes from kid to kid? Like, I would just love to hear how you think about all that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to answer your first question first. So I think, people make a lot of comparisons about like, oh, well, it's just like, it's just like when they cry for a cookie, like you mentioned, or something like that. So I think we have to keep in mind the age that we're talking about, right? So if your young baby is crying for something, most of the time you're going to be responding, right? It's not like a matter of them manipulating. They're not trying to get something out of you. Like that's for toddlers, sure. Like tantruming and all of that stuff, like you can't give in to every single tantrum or want that they have, or else you would never leave the house or get anything else done. So I think it's just important to like use your discernment there with like, okay, does this actually make sense? The thing that I think is really interesting too is there does seem to be this shift in every other area except sleep. I wrote a Substack article about this recently, how I just was thinking about it because I was potty training my daughter. There is no one that's going to tell you, oh, just leave them on the toilet to cry and like they'll figure it out eventually, right? So we're not
True.
doing that. And then there's also this huge rise of gentle parenting in the last, like 5 years or so, or a little more. We're really supporting their emotions, and timeouts are not as, in fashion, and like things like that. So and even with feeding, like you're feeding your child baby-led weaning. Like there's all these different things in parenting that are becoming more baby-led or child-led, right? Or like more developmentally appropriate. And I think getting back to what we were talking about before, sleep is like the last thing to catch up, because it is what is so like soul sucking for us as parents when we're not sleeping. Like that is what is the most acute issue for us in those early years, is that we're not getting enough sleep. And when somebody promises, hey, this method is going to work for you and it's going to be really tough for a couple days, but then things will get better. Like who wouldn't want to sign up for that? I know I did with my first. I was like, yeah, hell yeah. Like that sounds amazing. And then I learned the truth, which is that unfortunately it doesn't work that way for everybody. And even for those people that it works for, it's not necessarily a magic bullet that's going to work forever, right? So you mentioned your child, your
very true. It definitely didn't stick for us forever.
Right. So that's just like all important stuff to know. So, if a parent is really struggling and they're not coping well and they decide to do something like that, like no judgment from me, but I just want them to have the facts and to know that like they don't have to, A, and B, the effects might not last. Like the marketing is really not all it's cracked up to be, right? They say, oh, you're going to have a good sleeper for life and all of this stuff. So I think parents just need to be like really careful where they get their info from. Just always making sure that they're checking in with their gut. And like Esther and I were talking about before, like it felt terrible when we were doing the cry it out with like our sensitive kids, because we didn't know that like that was not an ideal candidate for that type of method, right? So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think just doing what you feel is best is always the number one advice we get from so many different parenting experts.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's the common thread. It's just like, do what feels good for you and your kid. And every kid is different. And I don't think there's a magic bullet to anything parenting related ever.
Absolutely not. Or else there wouldn't be all these different approaches and different there would just be one answer. There would just be one way, and that would be what everybody does. But there's not, because there's not one thing that works universally.
No, it's just friggin' hard no matter how you spin it. And, and I think it's hard to be a kid too. Like it's hard for them. It's hard for us. I think if we can all just accept that, then we can move through the phases a little easier, because
the mindset piece is huge. Yeah. The mindset piece is huge. And I think that's the beauty of having a second and seeing that like, wow, this kid is so different and we're doing everything exactly the same. Maybe what we're doing isn't actually the only thing that matters. Like they just arrive their own little being. And my husband and I talk about this all the time, where it's like, because we have so many friends that, do these different methods and things like that. And then they struggle later in a different way. And a lot of people, I think, especially as first-time parents, are just always looking for like a fix or some kind of like quick solution that's going to make their life easy again.
Hack.
And that's, they're like looking for that one thing that's going to make them feel like they did before they had kids. And that's going to make them feel normal again. And that's going to make them feel rested again. And it's going to make them feel connected as a couple again. And all of these things, you're just wanting things to feel easy and like they did before. And that's just not a realistic expectation to have in those early months or even early years. And the more you can let go and stop fighting against that, like you're swimming upstream, the easier it will be overall to just kind of surrender.
There's like so many opinions on everything parenting. And like I was going to ask you, like, if there was one thing you would want parents to know about infant, toddler, kids sleep, what would it be? But I feel like we've already covered like so many little amazing things, like the mindset shift, and like every kid is different and you know your kid best and you do what's best for your kid. Like these are already all so incredibly helpful that I feel like that kind of like sums it up basically. But if there's one more thing.
Are you sure there's no magic bullet?
I promise. I wish there was. Trust me. I promise there's no one magic thing. I mean, it's like a very unpopular answer, but really time and patience does do so much. And it's hard in the moment, but it really is like everything is just a phase. And one day my youngest is about to be 3 and she's like not really needing me as much anymore. And it's kind of breaking my heart, where I'm like, oh wow, I don't really have that much time left, where I'm like cuddling a little toddler to sleep at night. And she's, touching my face and telling me how much she loves me. Like this is not going to be forever. So I really need to try to enjoy it and soak it up.
I think that's the most beautiful place to end, because as hard as those nights and the snuggles and the extended bedtimes and the wake ups, like as hard as it all is, you get those like incredible moments in between where your kid strokes your hair or tickles your back while they're breastfeeding. Like there's just so many little moments where you're like, yeah, this is going to be gone before I know it. And you have to find the silver lining.
Totally.
Thank you, Rachael. This was so, so cool. It was great to talk to you and hear your point of view on all of these things. Also because I feel like Esther and I are in the thick of it in different ways with our kids. And now that I've been sleeping again for a few weeks, I feel a bit more sane, but I'm still constantly questioning, like, how are we getting that sleep? And when we can't get our daughter down to nap or like little things like that are happening, I'm always like, oh no, like.
And then they get older, Melissa, and then you are still questioning everything. It's just not, it's different things. I question myself every day.
I meant to say also, that you're just in like the real trenches. 8 months is notoriously like one of the worst times. Yeah, 8 to 10 months, there's like a huge regression and it just can really suck. And when you're doing all this questioning of like, how do we fix this? It's like they're on to the next thing. It's just the development at that age.
That's
is so
the annoying thing too. It's like once you get a handle on the phase, you're like, shit, now there's a new one? What the hell?
Exactly. I know. So you just have to hold it all so lightly and just know that it's temporary.
I know. The thing is, I kind of blocked it out with my first. Like, I don't remember the details of them.
Yeah, no,
I don't remember being like, oh yeah, at like 8 months is when this exact thing happened. I'm just like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
What did we even feed you at that age? Like, I don't remember.
Also because like they're different kids. Like what was for Oliver at 8 months might not necessarily be for Phoebe at 8 months. Like they're different kids.
It's so true. Well, this was a joy. Thank you so much. You're wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, and that's the pod. But please don't go anywhere yet. Don't press any buttons. Before you go, we want to remind you that We're Doing Great is brought to you by Puck Puck, an award-winning company reimagining how kids play and learn using technology. If you appreciated this episode, please give us 5 stars so other parents can come find us too. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Come find us on Instagram and TikTok at We're Doing Great Pod. We would love to talk to you and learn from you and just chat and be friends. And until then, don't forget you're doing great.